Store lamb buyers are being cautioned to temper the prices they pay because winter schedules will be well back on previous years. Saleyard conversations have indicated that some buyers expect September and October schedules are going to be similar to previous years at about $8 a kilo. AgriHQ Senior Analyst Mel Croad joins us now. Good evening, Mel.
Hi, Sarah.
It's been a bit crazy out there with the storm lamb market and going quite red hot in recent weeks. What's been some of those drivers?
Yeah, look, I think the reopening of the Saleyards post our lockdown was a real catalyst for what we've seen in the store market in recent weeks. There was a bit of pent-up demand, and I guess when the Saleyards reopened, it gave some just a little bit of confidence that possibly everything was sort of getting back on track. There was definitely that need to secure winter trade store lambs, where buyers couldn't actually sort of access that store market to a big degree through April and early May. And I think too, we had a little bit of rain through late May and well into June, and it just gave some farmers the opportunity to restock. And I guess to protect and keep cash flows going, essentially. And store lambs, albeit on a rising market, actually provided a bit of a low-cost re-entry point into the trading environment. So there were a number of factors, but they were sort of more domestically influenced rather than global export market influence.
Okay, so continuing to lift, or are they just going to start to stabilise?
Look, we've already seen that really hard, fast lift in these store prices. Pre-lockdown, they were sort of ranging around the $2.60 to $2.70 a kilo price range, so sort of trending below $100 a kilo, whereas we've probably seen nearly $1 a kilo put back onto that store lamb market in the last 6 to 7 weeks. So we've seen a really big lift in a short period of time. And unfortunately, it hasn't been market-driven, as I mentioned, but we are starting to see a few variations week to week, and we're reporting on those. Chances are we're starting to see some farmers that have probably filled their current requirements. I think with lockdown and not having that ability to buy large volumes of store lambs, we've seen a greater supply come on the market as a result, and also a few more coming out of the woodwork just because those values lifted so quickly. I guess we do look at previous seasons as benchmarks as to what we can expect for the market ahead. Unfortunately, 2018 and 19, through those winter months, we saw really strong upside in store values. And last year we saw those heavy store lambs actually pushing up over $4 a kilo, which sort of was getting us around the $200 per head mark. Now that was driven because of a very strong farm gate price for lamb. So the market in late August was around $8.20 to $8.50 a kilo. So it really drove the confidence in the store lamb market this time last year, whereas we don't have that same level of confidence in our overseas markets right now. It's just that store market's been purely driven by the need to replenish numbers. And so it does suggest that, with the market not reflecting the export environment, will we see? I don't think we'll see those prices push to the levels that we saw in the store markets last year.
Yeah, so let's talk about our overseas markets and really what our store prices should be connected to, but it is getting quite disconnected. The impact of COVID-19, is it over, or have we shaken it off completely?
No, it's far from being over, and I think we're seeing that just recently too, with caution around a second wave of infection rates, and that's happening in some of our key markets as well. So I think the one constant is that all markets are basically reacting the same. There's been a lot of uncertainty there since basically February, really, if we want to really rewind back to there when China saw their infection rates skyrocket, and we sort of haven't got beyond that. The markets have reacted to a lack of demand. consumption rates for lamb have dropped, and we have still seen relatively high production rates through New Zealand. So what it means is that we've started to see stocks of lamb building not only in our key markets with their own domestic supplies, but also with the volume of lamb produced here, not necessarily finding an immediate market. So, yeah, there has been a little bit of disconnect there, and that has been reflected in the farmgate slaughter prices for lamb over the last couple of months. We've seen prices fall, particularly through April, when normally we would expect those levels to be adjusting higher. So there's a lot of things to factor in there, but definitely we've seen lower demand and lower in-market prices for lamb, and that has been reflected in just where that farmgate price is sitting at the moment.
What can you tell us about the general sentiment around processors and what they're paying versus what's happening in market generally?
So at the moment, we're starting to see a drop-off in supply of New Zealand lamb into the processing plants, which a lot of that is just seasonal. We tend to get to our lowest weekly kill rates through June, July and into August. What we're seeing at the moment is that farmgate lamb prices are starting to lift. They have lifted in the last few weeks, and that has been driven by those falling supplies of lamb. So we're starting to see some competitive tension between the processors, or what we often refer to as procurement competition. We have to bear in mind too that farmgate lamb prices are still significantly lower than this time last year, by as much as 70 cents to over $1 a kilo behind where we were last year. Now, that was driven last year because the overseas market demand was really strong. And we're not actually seeing that at the moment. And I guess the concerns lie there that if we're already starting to see procurement factored into the weekly price movements in the lamb market, we actually need to see a sustained market improvement to back that up if we're going to see further weekly lifts. Because the concern is if procurement remains in the driver's seat, it basically distorts some of the reality of the market. And when you've got procurement in that driver's seat, it certainly leads to more pricing volatility when we're looking further out and further down the track as to farmgate pricing expectations.
Absolutely. Hey, and just lastly, let's close on AgriHQ QA. Can you tell us about this new innovative series that you're creating and how people can watch and be a part of it?
Yeah, so we have, we've basically, the purpose of our AgriHQ QA is it's another medium where we can really flesh out those topics that we feel need greater discussion than just what our subscribers get in our reports. So we're basically looking at really topical things that we feel listeners probably would like a little bit more insight into. And we try to keep them short and sharp. We have been discussing the lamb market in depth in recent weeks, just because we've seen that disconnect, and we just wanted to get that message out there that the expectation and pricing expectation in spring may not be as high as what many were anticipating when they were sort of getting back into that store market. So it's a great way for our analysts to connect with listeners we put up our recordings once a week or fortnightly, just depending on the information out there. And we're doing that basically via Facebook or our emails, and we're getting exceptional feedback. It's really neat to be able to connect with farmers in this format, I guess, and get the real nitty-gritty out there and really drill down into those topics that we think we need to focus on So it's been a great concept that was brought into AgriHQ, and I think it's got real bones to continue.
Awesome. So AgriHQ on Facebook, you can watch that live and ask questions of the analysts and get that immediate response, as well as I believe they're available on podcast. Head to farmersweekly.co.nz. That's Senior Sheep and Beef Analyst for AgriHQ, Mel Croad, with a bit of an update on the lamb market.
This is Sarah's Country.